Today we're going to try and repair the tabletopper called Skeleton Jamboree. I bought this at a swap meet from a reseller of Lemax, and it's kind of a shyster. He did say that this doesn't spin. As you can see, they're not moving. But he didn't tell me that I got the headless skeleton. Last time I checked, it's the headless horseman. And that the tree has some broken limbs. And then there was half-assed where they glued a smaller limb onto the bigger limb, and you can just see in there. So yeah, I'm not too happy with that. Also, I should have had some red flags when he wouldn't let anybody open the boxes to look at the condition. He just said, doesn't spin. And if you look at the box itself, without getting too much glare from the light, you can see that the best figure, in my opinion, is the skeleton that's missing his head. So, yeah. At least it came with a box. So, as you saw, flip it on, all the lights work. You can kind of hear it trying to turn, and I can manually push it. It's stiff. I have a funny feeling either the drive belt has broke or a gear, but also I noticed that the seam here is huge and it's rubbing here, and you can hear it scraping. So it's possible the internals have been knocked askew from his previous whatever he did with them, since apparently he doesn't know what he's selling. Anyway, let's take this apart. Start the same way we start everything. Peel the bottom off. This one I'm just going to peel the edges just enough to get access to the center plastic, which is almost the same diameter as, let's see, is almost the same diameter as the actual unit itself. That way I'm less likely to destroy this foam mat, since it's actually, well, it was until I just tore it. It's actually in really good shape. And it looks like the glue is brittle and not really adhered as much as it used to be. Might be able to do it without getting the heat gun. Somewhat. Alright, well, I guess we're going to use the heat gun. Let's get this done faster. Just like in the last video, I have the heat gun set a little bit lower in temperature so it doesn't melt the plastic as fast as it was doing in previous videos. If your heat gun has adjustments, mine's set at 175 degrees Celsius. A lot of heat guns don't have temperature adjustments, they just have wattage. Go with the lower one. always the exciting part. If you're curious, if you haven't seen the previous videos of anything, what this white paper with a black oval is, that's from the robot build. I built a robot from Wish where it's supposed to follow the line and then go in an oval or a centric circle. I just haven't removed it from my bench. Okay. Let's remove the power and see about getting these figures. There we go. So now we have it open. Get rid of the glue and see how this thing works. Alright, now we need the power back that just threw out. There we go. Well, the problem is I have a broken gear. Possibly two. Nope, just one. I am going to attempt to show this on the camera. A lot of moving pieces. Hopefully you can see that pulley spinning. And if I turn these fellas right here, or ladies too, I guess, right in there, this pulley is supposed to be spinning a shaft, and the shaft has a small drive gear right there. And if you listen, you hear the clunking, and then you can see it jerks in my hand. Right there. Hopefully it shows up in camera. I can see the silver shaft spinning inside the gear, since the gear is split open. So instead of being a circle, crimped onto the shaft, it's now got a gap, and the shaft is spinning inside. So in this case, looks like the drive belt's okay. Got a broken gear. So now we gotta find the gear. But before we can find a gear, we need to get the gear out. So let's see what it takes to take this thing apart. And my hopes of not destroying the mat are gone, because it looks like the screws that hold the center on go through the plastic bottom. So mat stuck pretty good, so I'm just going to try and cut a small hole where the screws are. I guess I'm mistaken, it doesn't go all the way through. Somebody else messaged me with a different tabletopper that spun and asked what the common cause is, and I explained to them that it's usually the belts that break or wear out. They were able to pop theirs off without any major issues. Same thing, they had to peel the bottom back or off, and then when they opened it up, they saw that the belt had snapped. They replaced it with a hair scrunchie belt. Kind of like in one of the previous videos I said you can use like the belts for horse manes. It just depends on the diameter you need. You don't want anything too tight to put pressure on the plastic because you'll break it. Kind of like this gear is broken. And I do not see how this thing comes off. Wasn't a very expensive piece, but I still like to keep it even though I got the headless skeleton dancing in a circle. Okay, there are screws. There we go. So on this one, if you have a broken gear, you're going to have to strip all the mat off, and you can see right there is one of the screws. And you're going to have a total of 3. So I'm going to scrape this mat off. And I'll be right back. That way you're not listening to me talk. Okay, we're back. Got the 3 screws out. There's the 3 stands. There's the 3 screws. And there's the 3 holes. Alright, without breaking this thing again, we have the main brain with the blob chip. There, that's what does the flickering of the lights. As you saw, the lights flickered. You have 2 different LEDs inside the flame. Instead of using a flicker light, they're using probably a red and a yellow, or red and an orange that pulse. This is probably what tells it to pulsate using the capacitor and the resistor. You can do it with a timing chip, but and I'm sure that's what this is. But with the goop on top, you can't tell. This one's simple. If in fact it ever burned out this little circuit board, you could actually build a new timing circuit. And here's one. It's a little larger than this one, but it's a basic timing circuit to make this LED pulsate. This was a test for a different project that was done. So anyhow, back to the issue at hand. So the gear that's broke is underneath this plate. So we need to take the top plate off. And we'll get rid of the stuff around it. This one's not broken, I'm just inspecting it. This is the broken gear. This gear is not supposed to come off. This gear is pressed onto a knurled section of this shaft. That is why this does not turn. Probably doesn't turn, and it probably broke. Not necessarily from age or even use. Probably because it was screwed in at an angle, and this was rubbing the inside of this casting. You're putting a lot of stress on it. I'm surprised the belt didn't spin or snap or overheat or even throw itself, that it broke the plastic gear. The belt would be the weaker part. So now I need to go through my menagerie of scavenged parts and try and find this gear that takes up the same amount of space, diameter, of the distance between that gear, and has the same teeth spacing so it can drive the gear, and has the same shank diameter that can press onto the shaft so it gets driven by the pulley directly below it. So basically this all spins. This little, it's all back together here. This little gear on top of the big gear drives the teeth right there. So I can make it spin again once I find a gear. I just can't replace his head. Unless somebody has a head lying around they'd like to donate to the cause. But I'll be back in a few once I find a new gear. Alright, well, here's the broken gear, and this is what I found. And you're going to be like, whoa, that's not the right size, the right shape. So, here's that one. The important part on this one is the nose. So you get some that contrast it better. That nose is the right diameter, height, and has the shank hole I need. So I need to carefully remove the gear from the gear by cutting the big gear off a little gear, because this is one cast gear. This came out of like a Walkman or something. I just scavenged parts from anything and everything. Doesn't matter as long as it has parts I can possibly reuse. Here's some of the gears I had to go through. I have 3 buckets like this full of them. And now I just got to find a cutting implement, which I thought I had lying around here from the previous project. Alright, let's now, if you're afraid of cutting yourself, or you're afraid of somebody cutting themselves on camera. Oh, there it is. I had the house on top. Now we'll use a brand new one. It's sharper. What I'm going to carefully try and attempt to do is take this razor knife and slowly cut through this gear so I can try and get the cleanest cut possible. The gear is slightly taller than I need, so I don't have to go completely flush, and I'm hoping the angle of the blade will take up the height that I don't need. If not, just run the gear on sandpaper like this and file it down a little. So I would normally have a handle in my X-Acto blade, but unfortunately they seem to be getting cheaper made, because every time I seem to use one I always break the plastic piece that holds the blade. So I got lots of handles with no collets to hold them in. Kind of annoying. I'm just gonna work our way around and making sure the score is in a straight line, which it appears to be. Get rid of some of the foam. The joys of making custom stuff or fixing stuff. As you can see, by rolling it back and forth, I've cut through almost 50% of it, and voila. So it might be hard to see again because the black, but it's cut almost flush. So this could still be used as a viable gear if I only needed a flat gear of this size. This is now my replacement for this one. And there is a slight height difference. So, do I have any sandpaper in here? I have a sanding stone. Hold on a second. Perfect. Now this is a press fit, so you gotta push hard without breaking anything. So the top piece is easy. because it's smooth. The bottom piece is hard because that's the knurled section. So I need to have the pulley all the way up. So I'm going to use the spudger that still has the grip on it underneath to push the pulley up so the gear is as high up as it goes. So as I'm pressing down, I am not pressing the pulley into the base, I'm pressing the center of the pulley, which is the strongest part, into the spudger, and that way hopefully I don't break anything. Because I went through, well, one bucket of gears and that's all I found. I don't know if I have any more. Now what I'm looking for is something small enough to put equal pressure around the gear edges. And socket is still too big. Alright, that's a 3/16. That's way too big. Too big. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, remember the thing I said I didn't want to do? I just did it. Alright, well this black gear just split open. Apparently I either pressed too hard or this inside hole is slightly smaller. Alright, back to the proverbial drawing board to find another gear. So I'm going to go through another bucket and see what I can find. I'll be back. Okay, I'm back. I was able to find one more gear and I already pressed it on. It's another black gear, not a white one like the original. Color doesn't matter as long as it's the right teeth, shank, and diameter. I wanted to see if it would fit, so when it pressed on, I just pushed it down. I used that 4.5 millimeter jack that I was using before that snapped it. Of course, I just tossed it out of the way, and I don't know where I tossed it to. Oh, it's right here. So the steel shaft fits inside the hole. This is just something I use for testing Lemax when I use a power supply. And I just carefully pushed it on, and it actually fit without breaking, so that way you didn't have to see me break two of them. So it's on, and it's nice and snug. The other gear lines up to it just fine. Put the other gear back in its hole. Now we can reassemble. Except I found the screws, but I don't know where I put the top cover. One screw, two screws. Those are the screws for the cover. Huh. I bet you I threw the cover inside my bucket of gears. Alright, so I guess I'll be back again once I find the cover for the transmission. I'm back. That was easy, it was right on top. But yeah, apparently I did throw it inside. Alright. Alright, so the cover's on, screw it down. test to see if the belt is strong enough to turn everything. Which it's not. You can see that gear isn't turning. So first, let's see if I just didn't over tighten it and it's binding. Apparently that's the problem. Too tight. So kind of a noisy little gear there. Alright, let's drop this on and see if it spins. There we go. Turns. Now let's screw it in and make sure it actually still turns, since it's technically just floating in spot. All the gears are greased and lubed. I use a kind of like a white lithium grease, and once you get that stuff on your fingers, it makes it really hard to hold anything. If your gears are dry, I'd recommend relubricating them. The stuff I normally use is either from a hobby store, or if I'm out, I'll use plumber's white lithium grease from the hardware section of a hardware store, or the plumbing section of a hardware store. Hardware section of a hardware store. What a moron. So anyway, all my gears are covered in lube, and then of course these are, so now my fingers are all slick, which makes it hard to hold the relatively smooth shaft of an anodized screwdriver. Alright, so those are all in. Ooh, that's not good. What are we stuck on? Okay, well, I see the problem, why I keep stopping, and let's see if I can point it out. Alright, let's see if we can get this close to the camera again. Right here on the bottom, right there, are casting divots, and they're catching right there by where my finger is pointing. That's why I keep stopping. So either it's too tight or the casting divots are too tall. That might have caused the problems to begin with. I don't see any purpose for them. So, there's 4 of them. One of them is completely gone, almost 100%. It's about, actually about 90%, so mostly gone. One of them is half gone, and the other 2 are there, and that's what it keeps stopping on. So I'm going to try and trim these and see if that helps. That also might be why the table was cocked at an angle and rubbing up the one side, is because when it snapped the gear, that little tab was stuck on the outcropping of the transmission. So it's 2. The Mad Pumpkin Patch, which was one of the first videos I did, just to help some people, has a similar issue. The casting is too tight, and it was catching, causing it to click and squeak. And after cleaning it and trimming off the casting, and allowing for the slack to move back and forth, it worked again. Still catching a little bit right here. There we go. So, if you have some gears laying around, try them out. I disassemble everything for parts, but I have been notified by somebody that was needing assistance on fixing their tabletopper. I told them where they can try and find gears. They bought an assortment pack on Amazon, and I believe it was around $10, and inside that assortment pack it had that drive gear, which was broke on his. So he bought a pack, I think it was like 172 gears and a couple of pulleys, and he was able to fix it himself at home with the proper gear, not having to cut it off with an X-Acto knife blade or drill out the hole. But apparently that first gear is apparently a little too brittle. The second gear, which I don't even know how I didn't see it the first time because it was just loose, is the same diameter, same shank, slightly shorter, and same teeth pattern. So as you can see, it works. And now that I've cut off those tabs that were sticking down, the little casting tabs, it's spinning smoothly. You don't see it wobbling, and you don't hear it clicking as it bounces over. So just gotta fire up the hot glue gun, clean off the lip, get all this old hot glue out, and glue it back together. and finish scraping off the pad and just make a new pad for it. Which, if you don't know how to do that, it's in one of my other videos, but all you have to do is glue it back together, trace the outline of the unit onto a piece of foam. I use foam from hobby stores. Take a pair of scissors, cut on the inside of the line so it's a little bit smaller than your base, and then hot glue it on, rubber contact cement. Here's the one I did from the last house. You can see where I traced it. It's quarter-inch thick. It doesn't have to be this thick. They do make thinner. I just bought this thickness for a different project, and I bought extra in case I made a mistake. I was making a socket holder for anybody that has lots of little sockets lying around. You can laminate these together and then cut out the shape of your sockets to hold them. So this was an extra sheet left over. You can buy them in black, blue, green, purple, yellow, white, almost any color under the sun. But I got mine at Michael's. I've seen them at Hobby Lobby, and I've actually even seen them at Ace Hardware's. So I'm sure you can find them anywhere. If you are going to do it, I would recommend using the thinner stuff, like what is on the bottom here. It's easier to work with, and if you have a display where your height differentials can matter, this might be too thick. But I'm using what I have lying around. You can use whatever else you need, or whatever you want to buy. So, it's just crafting foam from a hardware store. Or, don't put anything on the bottom. I honestly have a couple of houses like that that were previously repaired or opened up by somebody other than myself. And when I received them, they had no foam, which isn't a big deal. But it's all personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and continue scraping this, chiseling out all the old hot glue. I'm going to glue it back together, and then we're going to test it to make sure that it's not rubbing the inner ring. And if it's good to go, then we'll do a dark shot where it's a little darker to see how it looks. And then I'll probably glue new foam on it once I scrape the rest of it off. So I'll be back once everything's hot and set. Here it is running. Very important, when you glue it back on, there's a lot of lateral movement or forward back play. You can actually glue it to where it rubs on the side. So I had to keep moving it around until I could get the gap as close to equal distant as possible. You can see it's spinning, not binding, it's not grinding. It's loud, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot louder than I thought it would have been for a rotating tabletopper. But it could also be the type of gear I used. Different plastic, different material, will reverberate differently. And again, there's no foam mat, so it's vibrating off of the hardened bench, which is wood and steel. So when it's in its display, probably won't be as loud. And if you have your other houses on that have noise, you probably won't hear it. So, but there it is in its center, good to go. So let's kill some lights and see if we can get a nice darker shot of this thing. The aerial shot's not the best. Try and get a sideways shot, but you get a basic idea. Alright, here's a side angle versus a aerial, so you can see how it works. No binding, just loud. And I can still see that missing head. Anyhow, that was it. Find the gear, find the pulley, whatever you may need to repair it. Most cases it's going to be the band, less likely to be the gear. If you do have a spinning tabletop piece, make sure that you fit it back and it rotates. How I did it was I actually put it in upside down and had the hot glue gun ready, and I had it spinning while I glued it in. So that way I knew that it was spinning and not binding. And I did it upside down, which is really hard to do, I'll admit it. But that's what worked for me, and that's how I got it back in to where it spins without binding. So a combination of a broken gear and those 4 little tabs, which one of them was completely, well, almost completely gone. The other 3 were partially there. So, and then now we have a spinning tabletopper with a headless skeleton. Until next time, thanks for watching.